if people are looking at all the wonderful video screens, that there are some familiar faces and maybe one unfamiliar face that will soon become a very familiar face. So we're going to start off with some introductions before we introduce our very special guest with us. So I will kick things off. Most of you, I think, have learned who I am by now, but my name is Eric Leitner. I am a STEM and computer science instructional facilitator for Broward County Public Schools, as well as a global Minecraft mentor and a million other hats that I like to wear that we're not going to describe. Although I don't have, like, if any of you have been joining NASEF for a long time, I don't have a physical hat like the wonderful Steve Isaacs, who, shout out. But I do wear many metaphorical hats. But with us, that's right. And with us, as always, speaking of the wonderful Isaacs, is the amazing, the incredible Kathy Chow Isaacs. Kathy.
Hello, everybody. Thank you, Eric. My name is Kathy Chow Isaacs. I also wear many hats, but I wear them in the form of crowns. So I'm a global Minecraft mentor and currently a game design and development teacher at William Annan Middle School and Ridge High School in Basking Ridge, New Jersey. And been involved with the Minecraft and Farmcraft team with NASEF for, my goodness, just over a year or so. So thrilled to be here today. And what will I do? Will I punt or pass? What's the side swipe? I'm going to
I feel like we are going to the mayor. So if you want to punt and or pass to the mayor.
To the mayor. Well, thank you. Thank you. I have intercepted it. I am running for the touchdown. I'm running for the basket.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. So I'm clever. Like, I get to make games for a living now. So I'm loving life, and I got to make the Farmcraft game competition game world and change the way farming works in Minecraft, and hopefully stress you out a little bit and make you think about some of the complexities of farming in the world. So. And I'm here to have fun with the crew. So let me hand it over to Samton.
Hi, everyone. Thank you. I am properly introducing myself because I normally do skip through. But my name is Samantha Anton, and I am Chief Operating Officer for NASEF. But ultimately, I get to work with all of these superstars to try and figure out how we can turn this into a program that engages students from different countries, different ages, different interests. So truly, I am the ghost in the chat oftentimes. So if you are in the chat, and I see actually a few familiar faces that are coming in globally. So thank you to those who have been tuning into our streams on a week-to-week basis, because it's been really exciting to be a part of this community.
And we are always excited to have you. So thank you for helping to make all of this possible. I don't think any of this happens, without you. So we appreciate everything that you do and everything that everyone on the team does. But that gives me, like, I'm super honored and privileged right now because I get, like, the magical privilege according to the run of show document, and we cannot ignore the run of show document, that I get to introduce our very special guest today, Dr. Kate Brauman. So I'm going to pass the mic to you immediately because you are going to do a much better job than I could ever do describing not only what it is you do, but how you got there. So welcome.
Awesome. It's great to be here. Although I should say I've never been here before. We should start this out by saying that Eric made a bunny and I tried to feed it a carrot and I killed it with the carrot.
Oh, it's okay.
R.I.P. Bun Bun.
I know a lot about water, but I don't know a lot about Farmcraft.
The learning gets real.
It should be super fun. So I am a science doctor. I do not fix people. I pay attention to water and what happens in the environment. At the moment, I am a fellow with the American Academy of Arts and Sciences in their Science Technology Policy Fellowship, which basically means I am like the world's fanciest intern. And I work at the Department of Defense, where I am helping the Department of Defense think about how they should assess water resilience on their military installations. And this is super fun. I ended up doing this because I have been doing research and some teaching at the University of Minnesota, really thinking about what do we do on the landscape? How are we using water? How does what we do on the landscape affect water? And so Farmcraft is kind of the perfect place because that's where we get to like experiment with it and see what happens. And so I'm pretty excited about this.
And we're excited to have you. We've had some incredible guests in the past, and we're going to kind of take you through the adventure that we took them through as we do sort of our food for thought interview today. So we're actually going to jump into, and I know you're already with us because you told us our very tragic bunny story already, but we're going to jump into our Minecraft world. Now, we're not in the Farmcraft game world today. We are in a sort of a generic world, and it's not totally generic because this is actually a world that we've used before during one of our preseason challenges when we talked about creating large-scale farms in biomes that aren't necessarily typical of farming. In this case, we are here in our desert biome, and we've used this one before. But Dr. Kate, you are with us. I see you over there observing a cactus. So the reason we wanted to come in here instead of in the Farmcraft world is Brian specifically designed the Farmcraft world to be more realistic for things like water and soil quality and things like that to function as they would in the real world, at least with some degree more reality than what we've got here. So we said, let's take you, like we've done with other guests, into regular old Minecraft, into vanilla Minecraft, if you will, and talk about how water works here and whether that would be an ideal situation in the real world, whether that's how it works in real life, how far-fetched we're actually going, or so on. So I'm going to start us off very simply by doing this. I'm going to put a hole in the ground here, and I'm going to fill it with water. And the first thing that you'll probably notice is it's not like soaking into the ground. It's not leaching into the sand or anywhere. It's totally cool there. And to be honest, and Brian and Kathy, I think, can verify this, it'll be totally cool there forever. Which seems totally realistic.
I mean, that's pretty great if you're going to build yourself a water source. It just doesn't happen in the real world very often.
Right, so looking at a biome like this desert biome that we're in right now, first of all, we know not every desert on Earth necessarily looks the way that this one does. But let's talk about this biome and water specifically in places that are like this on Earth. Meanwhile, I think Kathy is flooding the place.
I did, but I thought well, see, I went up there because I was like, oh, maybe I'll go to an area that's not, that I won't be seeing. But
right,
I didn't pour it off.
And then you cause a ruckus trying to be
subtle. I caused a ruckus, sorry.
Right. So needless to say, water conservation would be a non-issue if I had an infinite water bucket, which I do right now, and could make infinite sources of water that would never go away. And by the way, I want to point out that this water source is essentially neither salt nor fresh. There is only one type of water in Minecraft. So let's talk. Let's talk about that. Let's talk about conservation in areas like this that obviously experience long-term periods of drought and the imaginary world of Minecraft versus the reality. So Dr. Kate, I'm going to pass the baton back to you and your expertise, because it's always good to ask the experts when we want to know more.
Well, I mean, the first thing I would say is that it's a desert, but it's not necessarily having a drought. So if we look around at what's here, there are all these cactuses, right? Mm-hmm. And cactuses are designed to, cactuses have evolved to live in places like the desert, and they only need as much water as what's available. But if we wanted to grow crops here, if we want to turn this into a farm, then we definitely are going to need to add water. And we really, in real life, want to be careful about how we were using that water, because there's only a finite amount of it. And we definitely could, in the real world, use it up. And so thinking about sort of what is the best use of this water and where do we want to put it, we probably want to think about making sure we have enough drinking water first. Then we want to think about food, because food is a huge way that we use water up in the real world.
So we want to think about, if I'm hearing you correctly, because you're talking about, right, like that we're not experiencing drought here, right? What we have instead is an environment where the living things here are adapted to the quantity of water that's here, right? That already exists in the space. That those are things we should consider if we were going to farm in this space, that we want to work with plants that maybe don't need the amount of water that we're used to using.
And there are actually lots of desert plants that people do eat. Like there are kinds of cactuses that people eat, and there are lots of plants that are more adapted to desert environments. Maybe not quite this dry in real life, but that is totally possible.
So what are some examples? Like if I was to go to, if you know this off the top of your head, if not, maybe somebody else does in the chat, but if I were to walk into my grocery store and go to the produce section, which of those may or may not come from a cactus?
It would look like a cactus. They're called nopales. It's a big, it's like a big cactus leaf, big flat one. So it's not the tall, skinny, prickly ones like in Minecraft world. It's flat leaves that have little pokey things coming off the side, and they're delicious.
I've never had it. And you know what? I'm pretty sure I've seen them in a produce section and just said, I don't know what you do with that, and moved on.
What are they called again? I need to look them up.
Nopales, and I think it's Nopales.
And so to further that question again, is that something that is farmed, right? Is that something that's actively farmed, or is that something that's sort of just kind of harvested?
I'm pretty sure people farm it. Because like in most farms, you know, you want to be able to plant them so you can harvest them and get them ready for sale and sell them, and not have to like go wandering all over the whole country to get them.
That makes sense, right? Like, so obviously if they're getting into places, and apparently someone in the chat also put, there are also cactus apples, which is not also something I had not heard of.
What?
So now there's another thing for you to Google, Kathy.
I know, I'm totally cactus. Oh, that's the prickly pear.
And you know what that came from?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. And that came from our man behind the scenes here. That's a Damien fact. So for the person you never see on camera in our world, so is Damien, who does a fantastic job of putting all of these video streams together for us. The director behind the camera, if you will, digitally, is Damien. So Damien added one to the group. See, look, you never know where the good information is going to come from.
No, everybody. I mean, wealth of information here. Hold on.
That's right.
I feel like I need to make a docent.
So let's talk about what issues, right, an environment like this, and then I want to compare this to other biomes as well, right? Because that's a big goal of Farmcraft, is we're looking at what effects on farming take place in a variety of biomes in the worlds that Brian has created, or in the world that he's created. So what issues affect water in various biomes, whether it's this desert biome or even in places where we may think that water is a non-issue, right? We think of tropical rainforests, we're like, yeah, they got so much water, that's obviously not the issue there. There must be other issues. But what are water issues throughout these variety of biomes?
Well, there's really kind of two big pieces that we want to think about. So one of them is how much water is available, and then connected to that is what's in that water. What does the water quality look like? And when we think about how much water is available, if we're here in the desert, it's really obvious that there's not a lot of water around. Well, except here in the desert, there's a lot of water around, because I accidentally also went running into that lake/ocean over there. But I can breathe underwater, it turns out. This is awesome.
That's right. We're in creative mode. Yes, we can change that if you want to, but I'm going to recommend against it.
So we need to make sure that there's enough water available. And what's kind of neat about what you've done here, I see you're building, is that we want the water to be in the soil. So even if all you're doing is having a potted plant at home, you're not putting water on the leaves. The water goes into the soil, because the plant gets water into its body through the soil. And so the amount of water that rains or that you put on with irrigation or by watering, all of that matters, but also how much water the soil can hold. So the thing about sand is, and you've probably seen this even in like a sandbox in your backyard, you pour water on the sand, it's like, whoosh, it's gone. And that means that if the plants can't reach it, if it goes below where the plant roots are, then it's not available to them. So even if there's a lot of rain, if it goes away, you may still not have enough water around. But if you have really good, rich soil, carbon-rich soil, then you can that soil can hold on to the water and you can grow for longer. But then you might also have soils that hold too much water. And actually, the same way that like if you hang out in like, it's really fun to get in the bathtub, but you hang out there too long and you turn pruny. This is functionally what happens to plants. Most plants do not like having wet feet.
Oh.
Right, which is something we think the opposite of, right?
Yeah, if you have potted plants at home, you might have noticed that usually nice, good pot plants come with like a hole in the bottom so the water drains out. But sometimes the pots don't have a hole, and you can actually end up getting so much water in there that your little plants will die because they actually get starved of oxygen. Also, if there's not, you can have not enough water, you can dry your plant out to death, but you can definitely also overwater your plant to death.
I have done both.
I have that
so
skill.
easy.
I mean, I feel like when we see these plants, well, when we see my plants, like, oh no, something's happening. I feel like my first instinct is to give them more water.
Yeah, to give them more water. I'm with you.
That's yes. 100%, right?
Did something bad to them.
Not to mention, I live in a place that is generally hot, where if you're not often watering your plants, they dry out very rapidly. Although we have a lot of water in the air, right? So I live in a very humid climate. I'm in South Florida, so lots of humidity, it's intense sun for most of the day, especially through spring, summer, fall, maybe a little bit less in the winter, but we get a lot of direct sunlight often. And while our patio is admittedly like 4 feet by 4 feet, that is the extent of where we have our potted plants in our little mini garden. But yeah, watering is like, you can literally see the difference between early in the day and midday, even in the leaves and the things in the plants, as they dry out. And I'm always I'm never the one to really do the heavy caring of the plants, because I would go out there and be like, they need all the water, and just go nuts.
Well, so something else about that though, that especially if you're inclined to overwater, you might have noticed, is that if you've got the good kind of pots that have the holes in the bottom and you overwater, almost always you have water coming out the bottom, right?
Oh, yes. It's spilling out of the little drip tray.
Yeah. So I am fully guilty of this as well.
I raised my virtual hand.
Yes.
But so it happens in real life also, actually. If you think about this little square of a farm that we have here, in Minecraft, we're going to water it, and the amount of water that we put on it is kind of the amount of water that's there, and that's it. That's the end of the story. But in the real world, if we overwatered this little farm, that water would go somewhere. And if we were on a hill, it would go down the hillside to the next farm that's lower down, or it would sink back into the ground and go back into the river. The water, it doesn't just disappear, it goes somewhere. And so a lot of times on a farm, it's different than your pot. So in your pot, if you are very careful and you water very carefully and you're really good about conserving water, then your patio stays drier. This is a good thing. But on a farm, a lot of times, if you are reducing the amount of water that you put on, it's not so much that the plants are using less water, it's that spillover is going away. And if someone else is using that spillover water, then at the whole watershed scale, we haven't necessarily made a big difference. And so when we think about planning and water conservation, we have to think about ourselves and what we're doing, but we also have to think about how what we're doing interacts with what all the other farms and all the other water users, what they're all doing.
And that makes total sense. And when it comes to that, it seems like there's obviously a lot of prediction in that, right? Like, so not only is there prediction, but I guess communication as well. Mm-hmm. And one of the things when it comes to water, when it comes to prediction, is climate change, right? So if we talk about climate change and how that impacts all of this, Very often we talk about global warming, and so our brains say, oh, everywhere is getting hotter, like everywhere is equally getting hotter, and therefore that must be drying up the water. This is actually something that I have heard from students in my classes, that I have heard from adults in casual conversation, that I've seen in internet discussions, which can be very interesting.
This is a dangerous place to go.
It is, right? So let's tackle that maybe with the people who should be leading those conversations, the experts that we have here who study this for a living. Does climate change and an increase in global temperature equal more evaporation, right? So more evaporated water, and therefore just less water to use as a whole for something like farming.
So I'm going to start out by saying the water cycle, it works. So we definitely won't have less water altogether. But what we definitely know is going to happen is that the way that water cycle happens and the way that the places that it rains and the amount that it rains and where it rains, all of that stuff is going to change. So hotter definitely means more evaporation. And that means that when we think about like how much water do those little plants need, it means we need to put more water on them. But when water evaporates, it doesn't go away. It ends up in the atmosphere, and it moves around in the atmosphere, and then it comes back down as rain. When the atmosphere is hotter, it can actually hold more water. So this is why if you live in a cold place like I do in Minnesota, and we heat the air temperature up inside, we heat the cold air up and it's super dry. It's like your eyes kind of hurt and sometimes your nose bleeds. It's super dry, and you have to run your humidifier because the cold air can't hold as much water. And when you heat up the air, that little bit of water that's in the air is like just a little bit, super dry. So there's more water and the air is hotter, there's more energy. And what happens is that we actually have bigger, more intense storms. So in some places, what's going to happen as climate changes is not only will it be hotter, in some places, it's actually going to rain probably more. Wet places, it's likely to rain more. So Minnesota is a place like that. But that rain is likely to come in bigger storms. And that's not great for crops, because what you want is, it's like with your houseplants, they want like just enough water every few days. They do not want, to be put in the shower and deluged once a month.
This is because they want the amount of water that Goldilocks would pick, right?
Exactly.
Not too much and not too little, just right.
And it comes back to that soil issue, right? Like if the soil can't hold the water, even if you put on enough water at the beginning of the month, if the soil can't hold it, it still gets dry by the end of the month. There are also dry places that are likely to get drier. And so some of those places that are like right on the edge of having enough rainfall to not need irrigation for their crops, some of those places are going to have really big problems because there won't be enough rainfall to support agriculture.
So a place kind of like we're standing right now, right? We've got a water source, and we can see we're right on the border of a biome that looks a lot greener than where we are now, if we turn our heads that way. Kathy wrote run. Oh, you're talking to your agent, Kathy. I was like, are you telling us to run? Like,
run!
I'm trying to be subtle. Run for your life.
Run for your life. No. But yeah. So
that's Kate, isn't that kind of what happened this summer in the Midwest with all the rains, what you were just saying? I might be like two statements behind.
Yes. So the really big floods in the Midwest, a lot of them happened pretty early in the spring. And it was because there were these big storms, and also because there was a lot of snowmelt that happened early. We know from the data, we've seen really good long-term big scale trend data, we know climate change is happening. Any particular storm or event, we can say that the likelihood of that happening is higher than it used to be or lower than it used to be, but we can't really pin like this thing happened because of climate change. So it's a little bit hard to say like this exact thing happened, but what we can say is that floods will happen more and droughts will also happen more.
Right, and that makes total sense. So if we were to look at like the cusp of these two biomes, and I'm actually going to kind of just fly over here so we're on camera, right? We're talking about the potential to see, and correct me if I'm wrong, I'm just trying to understand that the desert area of this biome may kind of continue to sort of seed into the greener areas here, right? This may spread
Absolutely.
As this area and this cusp area sort of dries further and further.
Yep. And we sometimes we actually make that worse, depending on the kind of farming that we're doing. If we're removing land cover. So the thing about the green is that it's green everywhere, and all of that is vegetation, right? It would be evapotranspiring, and it would be putting water into the atmosphere, and that would be cycling and could be falling down. And you can actually start to interrupt those kinds of small scale cycles by doing certain kinds of intensive farming, by clearing the land. Sometimes you get gullies that form on farmland so that instead of sinking into the ground, the water will just whoosh, come right off, and you actually see the encroachment of the desert into the greener area.
Yeah, and I mean, I feel like that's something, that we are also seeing on coastlines, although again, for maybe different reasons, right? But we're seeing this sort of, and that's something in Florida, for example, not only are we seeing erosion of the coastlines due to a removal of plant life, in order to make beaches for people. But we're seeing the salt water now kind of get into our water table, right? So we're seeing, again, this sort of overlap from one biome to another that had a sort of natural barrier as a result of just, natural conditions that are now changing.
Yeah. And a big piece of that with the salt water coming in is really about how we use water. So, the same way that a river flows downstream, and when it gets to the ocean, you can get mixing between the ocean water and the fresh water coming out. And so you get these things called estuaries and that are like a little bit salty. Actually, the same thing happens underground, which is super cool. And it really happens in Florida, where the water that's underground, it is moving, and it's actually slowly moving out towards the ocean. And as long as that water's, that's raining on the ground, and then the water is percolating into the ground, it's recharging an aquifer, and then the water in that aquifer is slowly moving out towards the ocean. But if we're pumping that water for people to drink in Miami or to grow crops, there's less water in that aquifer moving out, and the ocean is like, sweet, you're not filling up all the space, I'm coming for you.
Oh, wow.
Starts pushing and moving into the places where the fresh water was and making it salty. And if that moves back as far as, say, where your wells are, that means suddenly you're starting to get salty water in your wells, which is not good.
Right. And, I went underground here, admittedly, in Minecraft, because sometimes as we go into caves and things like that, which are sort of these open, spaces that they do have under the area here, there will be water. And I was like, maybe we'll find some if we do some quick digging, but no such luck. It looks like whatever aquifer is here, it has run itself dry.
Ooh, caves. Well, I was going to say, so I feel like one of my most important things you should know is that aquifers, groundwater, they're not like underground swimming pools. So it's more like a sponge, actually, where it's like kind of solid, but there's also room to have water in there, except it's not a sponge, it's dirt and rocks and all that stuff. And the water's like filling up all the little spaces in between. But Eric has totally undermined everything about what I have to say because he is from Florida, which has super special, actually very cool. It has limestone underground.
Mm-hmm.
And the way that limestone works is that actually that's usually how you get caves, is that the water erodes away the limestone to make these big spaces, and they actually can be filled up with fresh water. And so you can have underground swimming pools and rivers. So
we do have a few national parks or state parks, I should say, that are kind of around that concept, right? Where there's this sort of underground, like, swimming hole, if you will, that's this naturally occurring thing. And, and everyone loves it. But at the same time, maybe hopefully that would make some people aware of where our fresh water in the state is coming from.
So then you were saying like Minnesota. So then it's funny because you were saying Minnesota has certain water issues and then South Florida has other. What about, so then everybody has something else going on.
Everybody should be thinking about their water. And the problems aren't always the same. Minnesota is not going to run out of water tomorrow, and neither is Florida, but these are places where the actual sources of our water, we might have to change, and that can be really expensive. So in Florida, that means if your well gets salty, you're going to have to find someplace else to get your water from, and that's expensive. It means that people might not have as easy of access to water. Same thing is true in Minnesota. We have surface water. We are the land of 10,000 lakes.
Really? Well, what about so Florida is close to Mexico, and then which is close to, I'm going to say it right, Uruguay. Oh my gosh.
You were so close. You were so close.
Uruguay. So close. So then, so would you say similar geography, similar areas have?
I'm going to say no, actually.
No.
So this is the way that the water flows, especially underground, but also on the surface of the ground, is really about the geology. It's like a lot related to the rocks that were underneath, and all the way back to the dinosaurs. How did the surface of the land get formed? So in Florida, you're looking at limestone. So limestone comes from like a gazillion years ago. There were lots of little sea creatures that had shells, and they dropped to the bottom and they like solidified into limestone. It was super fast. It went like that. Up in Minnesota,
you're all standing on top of each other for a second, but I did bring you all because I did find water underground while we're talking. So.
Oh.
Whereas in Minnesota, we have different kinds of aquifers. And there are actually some places in Minnesota that have the same kind of limestone underground, but mostly not. And mostly if you see water on the surface of the land, like we have here, you don't have those kinds of like super porous underground karst streams. And I don't really know what the geology of Uruguay is like, but maybe we should take a trip. I would love to find out.
Ooh,
of course.
Go.
You know what? In a few months, once we're all vaccinated,
we have a well here, and the thing that to your point, like one of the things they do is they run a well test because they're trying to find out how much water you can extract from the well. And like, if you were picturing like a big open pool, of course, like, well, water should be immediate, but it's really like how fast does the water seep from the sponge into your well area in order to be able to pull it out. So I think like the volume at which you could pull water out of the ground is limited in certain areas as well. So you wouldn't be able to irrigate an entire farm in a certain period of time if you didn't have that kind of flow.
Yes, that is exactly right.
High five for the mayor.
Obviously,
boy.
I'm now trying to jump into the water because
I saw that. So we were talking about, how they're not just underground swimming holes, but here is one in Minecraft, right? And again, maybe that's a way that Minecraft is again different from what we'd expect from aquifers and things like that. But I mean, it's hard not to take a dip if you find one. So
I mean, why would I not do that?
that's right. So I want to ask this question, right? So needless to say, with the effects that we're seeing in climate change, with water crises happening, on a global scale in various areas, which I think Kathy is about to make worse in the game as she digs a hole
No,
into the water.
I'm trying not to make it worse. I just
okay. I thought you were like, no, we're just gonna let all the water in. Let's do this.
Oh no, I wanted to see where the source was. I'm trying
Gotcha.
really hard to
Is it below your feet? It might be right below where your feet are.
Oh, that's it. I think so.
Yeah, I think you're standing on it. But so my question to you is this, needless to say, or at least, and maybe this is my bias saying it, but I would think we need more people studying this, which means more people like you. So my question would be, how do you get involved in something like this? And how did you get involved in something like this? I find this question of like everyone I ever meet, right? Because we have this variety of jobs and I always wonder, like, did you just see water when you were 4 and you were like, that's it, that's my passion, I love water?
No. No, not at all, actually. If you had asked me, even in high school, if this is where I thought I would end up, I absolutely could not have predicted this at all. And I totally agree. I think more people should study water. And one of the things that I think is awesome about studying water is there's a million ways to do it. So for me, I actually didn't study water at all as an undergraduate. Mostly I was a comparative religion major.
So it's a bit of a stretch from where you are now, I guess.
I took a lot of science classes, though. I took enough science and math so that later on, when I decided to go to graduate school, I had the preparation that I needed to study water, even though I hadn't taken the specific classes that were going to get me there. So I'd sort of like I'd done the prerequisites is a way to think about it. And in between graduate school and college, for most of that time, I ended up working at an environmental organization, which I kind of stumbled into by accident. And I was the person on the other end of the email, the like generic, please answer my questions at environmentalorganization.org. That was me. And let me tell you, when you send your question about like, please tell me about otters, I have to write a report about otters, that was also me. And that was me being like, this is how you Google. But I also got lots of really great questions. And it was actually having that job where, I mean, in some ways, what I was a teacher. People would ask me questions and I'd be like, I don't know, let me go find out. That I got really excited about environmental work and how it involves taking science, but making it relevant for people. And sort of the two questions that people kept asking about that felt particularly important to me were water and energy. And I really did have a moment where I was like, I like rivers better than I like power plants. So I'm going to study water.
So then are you a bio? What kind of major are you?
So for graduate school, so my secret about me, I have never gotten a regular degree in anything. I went to a graduate school program was an interdisciplinary program in environment and resources. And
oh, awesome.
Yeah, it was great. So I studied water, I studied hydrology, and that's an awesome way to study water. I mean, a big piece of what hydrology is actually building models, just like in Minecraft, to say, okay, if we do this, if we build a world where we put the water here, does it end up here? And is that right? Like, does that match what we see in the world? And if it doesn't, what are we doing wrong between there and here, and how do we make that model better so we can predict what's going to happen in the future? So I did a lot of classes like that. But then I also took a lot of classes thinking about economics and law and politics, and really how is it that people think about who gets the water and who is allowed to take advantage of the water, and how much water, what is the value of water, and how is that different from how much water costs?
Mm-hmm. Oh, that's so interesting.
All of those are really important pieces of this puzzle.
Well, I want to say that one of your goals, you said, was how to make this relevant. And I think you did a really, really good job of that today, and even took it full circle, talking about how we could make models in Minecraft to make predictions as to what would happen in the real world, which in a way is exactly what we're trying to do. So you could not have made it more relevant to our program. You nailed it.
It was not a plan. I swear it was not a plan.
Right. So, first of all, thank you. I know we're short on time. This is where Sam usually pokes me and says, hey, we've got a minute. So I'm going to try and stay on top of it, Sam. I'm going to try. But Dr. K. Brauman, I want to thank you so very much. One, for all of the knowledge that you brought to us today, and two, for just being like a delightful sport in all of this, even after having, a tragic bunny incident,
Yeah, you really bounced back real nice.
That's right.
It's Eric who needed to bounce back.
I did. I just, I'll cry later.
It's good coping skills.
And we'll be okay.
Oh, we have an invitation to visit Uruguay.
We do.
Did I say it right? I hope I did. I'm so sorry. No, I said it wrong again. Oh my goodness.
Yeah, but I'm seeing they have sierras, forest areas along with beaches, and this is an important point to make, and I'm glad they mentioned it, because maybe this is where we end, and that is, we tend to often, and I'm going to bring it back to my favorite thing in the world. We tend to bring it back to Star Wars, where we talk about, everything is one biome, right? Star Wars, every planet is just one biome, but the reality is, even countries, let alone even cities, aren't necessarily just one solitary biome with one water issue, right? And that's kind of what we saw today, even here in Minecraft, as we're right on this cusp of these two biomes kind of bumping up against each other.
Absolutely.
So fascinating, and I'm glad that they brought that information to us, because I would have been curious. They saved Kathy a Google.
So I'm going to give you a little Farmcraft hint for the game from the mayor.
Ooh.
When it comes to water in the game, you'll notice you have a water level. You'll notice that water level will deplete over time. The drier the biome, the faster that's going to deplete. Your score is calculated, the water factor of your score is calculated based on like how well your soil is maintained. Kind of like Dr. Kate was saying, like it doesn't want to be showered once a month. It wants to be maintained over time. So if you could think about maintaining your soil quality at a certain level, if it drops below, let's say 750, you start losing points. If it drops below 250, you lose even more points. So if you can keep your water level up over 750 throughout the duration of the sequence of the competition, you'll find yourself having a much higher score. And
Brian, I just want to say thank you for that. We used to have to subscribe to magazines to get these kind of in-game hints, and now you're giving them away for free.
1-900, yeah.
That's right. Yeah.
Where do these charges come from?
Paid phone numbers to get these kind of tips, and now the internet exists, and we're just giving them away for free.
Yeah.
So again, thank you to Dr. Kate Brauman. Thank you to everyone who is here. Before we go, of course, we are going to talk about our next week's challenge. So Dr. Kate, if you have any last words of advice or information you'd like to share with our stream before we head into talking about next week's challenge and sharing some of the submissions that we've had over the last few weeks, we're all ears.
Well, I am just delighted to get to be here and share my water enthusiasm with you, because I think water is super fun, and it's a great way to do science with people and think about what people care about. And let me tell you, when you have to go to work every day, if you think it's really fun, it is way more fun.
Plus, you get to spend a day in Minecraft.
This is not what I get to do every day, as you probably realize.
Perks.
Bunny.
That's right. I could have made, and when I said it, we were all ears, I could have made a pun there as well, and I missed it. So we'll just let it go.
Well, I was going to say something about the shower once a month. I'll say that.
I did once try to kill like some insects that were infesting a plant by filling the bathtub out and completely submerging the plant underwater. You should be careful if you try that. You end up with a lot of dirt in the tub.
Oh yeah, and then down the drain.
Yeah, and then back into the water system. So.
Oh, someone uses cinnamon for
right.
insects. So look at this, 3 million people. Oh my gosh, I'm gonna try to say it again. Uruguay.
I think you got it that time.
That sounded pretty nice, yeah.
All right, so thank you again, Dr. Kate. And on that note, yes, applause from everyone else and applause from our viewers at home, even though that you can't hear them. I know they're applauding. They can put it in the chat.
It's waves.
There are waves in the chat, even better. So at this point, I think it has been a blast, but we're going to take a look at our upcoming third regular season challenge. Take care, Dr. Kate. So we're going to take a look at our our regular season challenge 3. But before we do, there was one Flipgrid we wanted to share and this one was from a prior. This was actually from our first regular season challenge, because this team sort of just knew where our brains were going, and we didn't drop them any hints.
Well, let's just say it's easy to know where our brains are going.
You think so?
I think that, yeah, I do. I don't know. Maybe they've been watching streams.
It is possible. It is possible that they've been watching streams. So this is the Craft Force team from Uruguay. Uruguay just keeps coming up today. No, I botched it a little bit there. So I blame you. You've planted the seed in my brain. No, I'm not blaming you.
You have to take ownership for your actions.
That's right. So let's share this video. So this was actually back from April 9th. So this was when we first launched our regular season challenges, but I wanted to share it now because it just feeds so well into our next challenge, because their brains were just seemed to know where we were going with all of this. So let's play this one.
Eric, can we share screen?
Eric, will you share your screen?
I suppose I should share my screen. You're just sitting here staring at our faces. I thought I was still sharing my screen.
Eric is enjoying the video.
I suppose I'll share sound too if I really like you.
Yeah, maybe.
Okay, only because I like you. I know. All right.
Hello, we are Craft Force team from Uruguay, and we found the tropical biome much more realistic than the ones we have worked before. Now we have to manage water irrigation. We had to fight against caterpillars, butterflies. We had to care about the soil, putting some fertilizers. All the time it was much more work to do. Really, farmers have a lot to do to keep their crops growing safe from all these dangers that were attacking our crops. So it was very difficult to take care of them and do all the things needed to keep them growing and to reach the final level with some crops alive. We found it really very difficult and much more realistic, really. Congratulations. And finally, this was our score. Not so good. We hope we do a bit better in the next biomes. We think we have to learn how to administrate our coins because they finish about in level 6 or 5. And we have to learn to buy seeds according to the ground, to the soil quality, and maybe that's we're resistant to fertilizers and to herbicides, because when you have to put a lot of herbicides, this is we're about to die if we keep on putting. We were going to kill butterflies and caterpillar, but we were also going to kill all our crops. So
So I'm going to pause it there. And that brings us right into it. So something that they did just so extraordinarily well is in part of the discussion there in that diary entry was talked very specifically about decision making, right? And realizing and reflecting upon the decisions that they were making as a team, right? They started by saying that their score wasn't so good. I think their score for a first try, if that was the first try, that's a great score for a first try. But they were talking about decision making, right? And reflecting on those decisions. Mm-hmm. And that takes us like right into regular season challenge 3. So if we look at regular season challenge 3, and here it is, and it should be available to all, I believe, right now. And again, you are going to do just like last time, 2 to 3 biomes. You're going to play through them. But your reflections this time in your diary, we want to hear about we want to hear about that decision-making process, right? So consider the various decisions that you needed to make as a farmer from seed to harvest. So the focus of conversation in these diary entries very much so should be on decision making. And Sam, is there anything we wanted to add to that specifically? Because I know that we had some conversation about the diary entries we were getting, and we wanted to make sure that we were giving people exactly sort of the ideas of what we were looking for.
Yeah, if you select show more on the regular season challenge 3 that you're on, that'll show the complete questions. So we do want everyone to take a look at all the questions and kind of just, they don't have to be answered in a particular order, but these are the things that we want you to think about when submitting your diary. And we also want to encourage you all to continue using Minecraft to film and record your diaries. I think we got a mix of submissions for the first few from different ways that people have submitted diaries. And I also quickly want to mention, if you have not submitted regular season challenge 1 or number 2, those are back open. So you have until May 7th to make sure that your team has one submitted for a regular 1, 2, and 3 in order to be considered for prizing. If you're participating and just enjoying it and you're not looking to win prizing, which is usually me when I'm competing, I'm just there for the ride and I enjoy playing. That's totally okay. And so I just want to make sure that those that are competing for the prizing keep in mind that even if you didn't do number 1, for example, on time, you do have an opportunity to go back and resubmit.
Awesome. So going back, and for those who are going back, let's do this. So for those who are going back to submit for regular season challenge 2, that diary entry for regular season challenge 2, it was all about making comparisons, right? That was the focus of regular season challenge 2, was to take 2 biomes, possibly 3, and compare, right? We weren't talking about the decision-making process, but we were talking about the differences between what farming was like and what, and possibly what decisions had to be made that were different in those 2 biomes. So we want to share some submissions that came in the last week or 2 that did a really good job of making those comparisons, not just in their conversations, not just tackling those points, but really kind of visualizing that for us. So let's take a look at some of those. And the first one is from Team Mary Marigold from Penang, Malaysia. So let me pull that one up for everyone.
Hello everyone, we are from Mary Marigold team. For this week's challenge, our team decided to complete the cold biome and desert biome challenges. After completing these 2 biomes challenges, we decided that we need to carefully and effectively allocate the coins to purchase the available resources to avoid situation that not enough coins to purchase water or fertilizer or bug remover at latter stage. The weather for both biome challenges are totally different, one is extremely cold, the other is extremely hot. After testing of soil, we noticed that both biomes have low soil quality and also poor water retention. We applied almost same methods for both biomes. The first method we used was bought the drought tolerance seeds from the lab, but we found out that we won't have enough coins to purchase resources like water or fertilizer or bug removers at stage 6 and 7. This method result in poor soil quality and also high water penalty, resulting in low total score. So we decided to change our strategic and use trial and error method to monitor the water level and soil quality. We only sprayed the water when the water level dropped below certain level. same goes to spraying of fertilizer. We only purchased the fertilizer when the soil quality dropped to certain level also. But this was not finalized at first trial. We played for several times using method 2, failed and retried, then only managed to get the water level and soil quality level that enable us to equally allocate the coins at each stages. We play for few times using the second method, and each time we managed to get higher and higher score compared to the previous trials. Then we decided that we should combine method 2 at the same time, assign the spraying of water and fertilizer job to each member. My sister was assigned to monitor the soil quality while I was in charge of monitoring the water level. We found out that the third method could make us obtain slightly higher score compared to method 2, and we played for several times using method 3 and got improved at each play. On both biomes, our team experienced the challenge to monitor the soil quality and water level at the same time. Sometimes, we are a bit chaotic when both water level and soil quality drop significantly at one time. Ended up we were not sure what to be done first. Besides, we also encounter issue where command prompts or NPCs are not populating. So we tried to re-import the Farmcraft file into Minecraft Education Edition, but still unable to resolve this issue. The issue only been resolved until we received latest email from NASEF saying that we need to adjust the Minecraft Education Edition's render distance to its maximum.
And I wanted to include that last little bit because as it turns out, there was a bit of a solution to one of the little bugs or glitches. And right, I don't mean to say bugs. I mean, again, we can make puns. But yeah.
There's a caterpillar in the code.
Right. If for some reason you are having issues where certain things are not spawning in when they're supposed to, or your NPCs are not responding, increasing the render distance usually seems to be solving the problem for most of our teams. So that setting usually solves the issue. It could be that some of the things that are spawning in or rendering in are simply too far away. And if you don't have that render distance up, they're not activating. So I did want to include that last part, but I loved how they started their video sort of side by side.
Oh, that was so cool.
I also want to give a shout out for, it was actually a team that told us about the render distance adjustment, and that was a solution that worked for them on a particular biome. So I think this is why we definitely want to encourage folks to go on the Flipgrids and participate in conversations with what people are saying in their videos, because I think a lot of your peers, for those that are watching, are giving hints and giving little things that they've learned along the way. And so if you are trying to get a really high score on any of the biomes, I would definitely go into Flipgrid and start looking through.
You know what? And without giving away too much, Brian, it looked like from some of the video as we watched this play on, and they were showing some of their playthroughs, it seems like some of the teams are starting to figure out exactly what the bug spray does and what it doesn't do without dropping too much of a hint.
Yeah. Yeah, I love the iteration that they were doing and the division of work and trying to maintain certain levels. And I just love how many, how much they tried to do that and iterate. And what's fun too is like, there's so many other ways to look at this, and they're not as intuitive as what you might naturally think. And those might give you potentially better results in different biomes as well. So it's fun that people are playing it and experiencing those different results. And there's a super funny story. Someday I'll have to reveal the background of the bug that we're encountering. There will be a backstory to it that is actually pretty darn funny. So
I do like me a good behind the scenes blooper reel. So that's okay. Yeah. I know we're short on time, so rather than play the next one all the way through, I did want to share, I do want to give a shout out again to those teams that did a really fantastic job of making comparisons, not only through their discussions, but visually. So Persephone's Flowers, which I know is a team that came up again, that has come up in the past. One of the things they did in their video, and I know we're short on time, but I'm just going to share this one shot right here, was actually take their data and actually process it side by side. And if we were to watch the whole video, which I know we don't have time for, they actually talk about the analysis of this data. So what a great way to actually take it, place it side by side, and then say we can analyze this data by literally visualizing it, placing it next to each other and making those comparisons. So I thought this was just a really fantastic technique that we saw in the video as well. I know we're kind of short on time, and we still have one last thing to discuss, Sam, and that is the NASEF Farmcraft leaderboard. So I was going to pass that one to you because you are sort of our head of all things leaderboard. I can share a screen if you'd like to, but I didn't know if there was anything you wanted to talk about comment-wise
I
as
was
those are
quickly
coming
trying
into
to-
you.
I was quickly trying to close many tabs so I could share screen, but if you don't mind clicking that link.
I can do that for you.
I was afraid I was going to expose like a email or something.
I always have email up on the screen, so I get it.
So big reminders about the different Farmcraft elements that we have going on. So the leaderboard is primarily if you're interested in the prizing, but again, if you're not interested in the prizing and you're just here for the ride like I would be, you are still encouraged to submit your score so that we could feature it. So essentially you just include a screenshot and then your main biome score and then your harvest count, and that is something that you will submit into the form. We try to update it at least once a day, but if a ton of scores come in, then we do try to quickly update it. But this is our current leaderboard. So I do want to give some shout outs to the teams that we have. We have representation from Mexico, Romania, United States, Malaysia has a ton of teams in the top 20. So lots of different teams competing globally. If you don't have a Google account, which is required for that screenshot upload, unfortunately, you are able to just email info@nasef.org and say, I don't have access to a Google account. These are our scores for the leaderboard, and we will upload those for you. So this is one portion of determining the winners of the Farmcraft prizing. These teams will have had to complete all 3 regular season challenges in order to be truly eligible for the prizing. So be sure to submit your scores. If you play within a session, I'm going to quickly try and wrap this up. If you play within a session and let's say you get 4 different scores, you can submit all 4 scores or you can submit just your top score. It's really up to you all, but we definitely want to see some of the top scores so that we can really build out this leaderboard and show all the different teams that are taking a chance at this. And then we also have Beyond the Game challenges. So if you go to our main NASEF website and visit our clubs and Beyond the Game challenges, we do have 5. And so these are you don't need Minecraft to participate in these. You can use Minecraft. So they're very open-ended, but really they're just little activities that we've put together to get you thinking about the different ways that you can bring together video games, agricultural biotechnology, a little bit of sustainability, some caterpillars. So be sure to check those out as well. And we will be emailing you all with more reminders as we quickly end our season. So no new teams will be able to register after this Friday, April 30th at 5 p.m. Pacific time. And then teams themselves, so if you're an adult sponsor and you already have a team registered, you will have until May 7th to add students onto your team because all challenges are due May 7th. So if you want to give more students access to Minecraft Education Edition, we still have a ton of licenses available. And so if you want to add students to your teams that are just going to be participating, maybe they're not competing, feel free to create teams and add them. And that's my updates.
So good.
All right.
Love it.
All right, so I'm going to do a quick passing of the mic around for everyone to say their farewells. Kathy, we'll start with you.
I'm going to say goodbye, good luck. There are so many countries represented on that leaderboard. That's really exciting.
Absolutely. Brian, I wanted to ask real quick. You saw what some of the scores on the leaderboard look like, and you invented the game, and I've even played it with you. I don't know that we've even come close.
No, 3,000 is really good. So I noticed, so Sam, one good thing would be to group these scores by biome, because you could see like what's interesting is that the biomes that are skewed in a certain direction tend to have a higher score for some reason. You could analyze that and maybe derive some strategy from that to get your scores up. I did post some cheats and some hints in the chat of the YouTube video, so you could check that out. And I think why not give a try, see what kind of collaboration exists if you could ask for advice or watch the videos of the people that are scoring high and find out what their strategies are and see if you could adapt. And if you learn something, then maybe you could share something that you learned back to the community and kind of help everyone grow.
Another pun. I like it.
Oh.
My final thought is we do have a special food for thought next week. So we will be back for the next few weeks with weekly streams. So be sure to mark your calendars and join us at 1 p.m. Pacific time, 4 p.m. Eastern time, etc.
All right.
That's my last update.
And And yeah, we'll be back. And I think all of us, the four of us, will be back with another special guest.
Mhm.
So I want to thank everyone, of course, as always. I want to thank Damien, who's hiding behind the scenes, and even told us about some cactus fruit in the chat during the stream. So thank you, Damien, and thank you to the NASEF team and to Brian for Farmcraft and everyone involved in this program, to the Department of State, and to our very special guest, Dr. Kate Brauman. Thank you, everyone, and we will see you next week.
Hi, everybody.